This is one of those places that I absolutely love to visit with my guests. Based on its size, fortifications, and how it's mentioned in the events surrounding this perek, Lachish is often considered by many to have been the second most important strategic site in all of Malchut Yehuda, the kingdom of Yehuda. It's second, of course, to Yerushalayim, the capital. Here, the Tanakh, archaeology, and ancient foreign texts are exact parallels matching one to one. It's as if the psukim are sprouting out of the ground. Lachish was lost from the stage of history. After its destruction by the Assyrians in our parak, it was resettled again by Jews, and then it was destroyed again by Bavel. After that, it was mostly uninhabited until modern times. And because of that, we don't even have the name being preserved. So we didn't know exactly where Lachish was. But in the remains of a palace in Nineveh of Ashur, archaeologists found a relief in the throne room walls depicting the destruction and exile of Lachish. And they found that it matches exactly with this site. And so finally, after all this time, they were able to identify the site of Lachish. And they come here, and as they're digging, one of the first things that they find, they're digging through, and they're like, okay, this is a big mound of earth and rocks and things like that. Nothing too interesting. The head archaeologist comes up to them and says, no, stop. You're destroying one of the most incredible finds you can possibly even look for here. Because what you're digging through isn't just a pile of earth and rocks. This is the Assyrian siege ramp, meaning they laid siege to the city and surrounded it, but then they decided to try to break through the walls as well. Now, again, in theory, the easiest way to break through would be through the big hole in the wall known as the gate. However, because the gate is so heavily fortified, very often it was actually easier to actually break through a wall instead. But in order to do that, you had to make a path up to the wall. And so they make this ramp going up to the wall so that they can send up their siege machines, which we'd call a magen, a shield. And on it, you'd have people who can break through the walls. In addition, you'd have archers that are firing arrows all along the way as they're charging up. And at the same time, you had the defenders up top who are throwing down rocks and even torches and stones so that they can try to destroy or light fire to these magenim, to these shields or to these siege machines that are making their way up. And so the siege machines are pouring out water. And you can see all this in the depiction of the relief. It's absolutely amazing. As they're trying to make their way up and breach the city walls and take over the city, which they do end up succeeding with in the end. Now here, they found remains of this siege ramp, the only still in existence siege ramp from the Assyrians in the world, which is absolutely fascinating. In addition, they found arrowheads both from the Babylonians and from the Assyrians from this revolt, right here at the foot of this hill. You can see depictions of Jewish people. Some of them are being tortured. Some of them are being led off into exile, and the city is being plundered. And you can see depictions of the Assyrian siege ramp, the arrowheads, and the shields, meaning the maginim, the siege machines. Keep these three things in mind. We'll discuss them again in the next video. But for now, in an attempt, as the Assyrians are making their way up towards the wall, the last ditch attempt was taking apart the cities. The Jewish people took apart their own city and making a reverse ramp against the wall in hopes that perhaps the Assyrians wouldn't succeed in breaching through. But it didn't help. They come through, they destroy the city, and they set it as an example. Sancherib not only has this depiction around his throne room, but he also sent out texts throughout the kingdom, what's known as the Sennacherib Prism, or Menseret Sancherib, which says that he, Sancherib the Great, the Wonderful, the Magnificent, at least in his own eyes, has destroyed the city of Lachish, and he's left King Chizkiyahu trapped like a bird in a cage in Yerushalayim. However, this is a fancy way of saying that he couldn't take Yerushalayim. You don't boast of taking and capturing and conquering the second most important city in a kingdom if you could have taken the actual most important city. And so that was the best that he can boast of. And don't worry, the people around him didn't buy it either, and they end up killing him shortly after. But in the meantime, this is an exact parallel to our story in our prakim that are telling us of Sancherib rampaging through Yehuda and then being stopped, not being able to continue and finish the job by Yerushalayim. But I want to point out one more thing, and this is on a little bit of a more positive note. There is another thing that's depicted all around in the background of this story, as is depicted in the throne room of Sancherib in Nineveh. You see lots of grapevines and olive trees. And these were the plants. This is the scenery that the artist who was sitting here, and you can tell the exact angle he was sitting at as he was looking out over the city. This is what he would see around, because this is what our fathers were cultivating here in this area. The modern day people of the Moshav who come here, Moshav Lachish, and they come and they resettle the land, and they didn't even know at that point what this was. They didn't know it was Lachish, but they see that the land is good for growing grapes. And so they have these vineyards right here. They produce prize-winning wines from these vineyards, from the grapes of these vineyards. And as it turns out, what they're doing is they're going back to their own roots. Because just as it was depicted then as being a place that's good for vineyards, we've come back to these same places. We've come back to our land. We've come back home, and we're putting our roots right back down into this same land. But if you want to know what the defenders of Yerushalayim felt, standing on the city walls, looking out into the darkness, and wondering if tonight would be their last in the world, with the Assyrian Empire on its way, for that, we have to head to the ancient walls of Yerushalayim in the next video.